Yeah, I would jump in because I think that one of the things that's interesting is sort of like the gamut of topics that span in the work. So I think Catherine's was very, very deeply rooted in motherhood and the bodily experience of that. And I think my work sort of stands in the middle, and then you have maybe Heather on the other side in a very political space with her stuff. And the series that I'm showing in this show, which is called Hold Me, the video piece, is I was creating it at the time of the uprisings over last summer, at the same time that I was experiencing like an onset of chronic illness, and I was being tested for a lot of things that were life-threatening. And so there was a lot of fear and betrayal in my own body about what I felt like I could lose. My children, my partner, they're featured in the work. But then additionally, I felt like there was this connection between this betrayal in my own body and a betrayal we were experiencing from the government and people around us. And so it was sort of about like, can't let go of my children, can't let go of the pain that we're experiencing as a collective in the time. And so I think that's where my work sort of falls in the topic.
Mm-hmm.
Alison, I know you unmuted. Would you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I was just gonna elaborate on what Kate was saying and with the breast milk pieces, and I feel like so much of motherhood is this balance of, there's all these moments that are really difficult, but then also we're simultaneously grieving that those moments may never happen again. So I think that that's something that I feel like speaks to me in a lot of my work as well. I'm really interested in that space of like really difficult, tenuous moments. Mothers speak really often about how they can't imagine having a second kid or a third kid or, piling more responsibilities. And then somehow it happens and you stretch yourself and it feels almost like you're going to break. But at the same time, there's this like, this moment will never happen again. And so there's an appreciation for that hardness. And so, yeah, so the sculptures that I made in the show were sort of a response to the quarantine, thinking about us all being at home, I had a new baby like 2 months ago. So welcoming a new baby into a home where we're all on top of each other all the time. My husband's working from home, my son's not in school, and sort of all of that pressure. So we created these sculptures that I'm now kind of calling squeeze sculptures, where we're putting plaster in a balloon and basically just squeezing, thinking about them as like all of this stored energy of the tension that we all hold, and trying to create like a manifestation of that. So I do think it's a lot about that buildup of energy and like how much can you take before it breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I definitely, in going through the exhibition, really noticed the signs of artwork that dealt with the body in like different ways, even if it wasn't as obvious in some works, I think, as in others. I think also just as women, and I can't even imagine like as, a mother really having, a constant relationship with your body that shifts just so drastically over time and then is compounded, I think, by, becoming a mother in whatever form that evolved in, right? Delia, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I guess if you just thinking about, these underlying tensions and continuing like on this theme of can't letting it go, Heather, I actually wanted to ask if, how your work, because some of these pieces are very political in nature, how has your work evolved in the past, weeks, even, on how we've perceived media in this very intensified year?
Yeah, so I did the there's 2 New York Times pieces in the show, and one of them is from like their companion pieces surrounding the 2 different times that our former president got impeached. And I don't know, like there's so many things to say, and so much that can't be caught in words. I think that tension is like so palpable, and I don't try to like, there's not like one solution, right? So I'm not trying to like find a middle ground. I'm not trying to like, here's your answer. I'm trying to encourage a space where we can gather and talk, share each other's experiences, not find necessarily common ground, but see each other as human with different perspectives and different experiences. And the work that I started during COVID, which I can talk about later, because somewhat completely different than the newspaper pieces, and also not. But it's less overtly political and more about deliberately creating community. And so, yeah, the funny thing about the inspiration of like making these newspaper pieces of like how our news is just constantly getting more in, the news cycles faster and faster, constantly updating. Like if you go to the New York Times website, it changes throughout the day. It's not like you get your one newspaper like you used to, maybe 2 in a day. With the bigger publications, they have an evening edition, but that just constant information, and it changes. Like this recent incident in Atlanta with the murders of 8 people, like that information changed over the course of 48 hours as it developed. And having that real-time information and instant feedback, it's like it's a conversation, but it's not a conversation at the same time. And that it can be so polarized is just really heart-wrenching to see, because the people get lost in the midst of the opinion. Even the people giving the opinion, like you can assume things about people giving an opinion based on their opinion, but sorry, I almost got hit by a basketball. I don't know what that was supposed to mean. That's my kid. And but yeah, so trying to create space where we can actually get to know each other and think about what it is we're ingesting in a more complex and layered and nuanced way. Because there isn't just one way to tell a story ever, at least if it involves more than one person. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think another thing that really stood out to me when going through the exhibition is just the different mediums you all work in, and whether that's like within each artist working in a different medium, or also just like the exhibition as a whole. Materiality seems to play a really large part in the exhibition. And so I was wondering if you can expand on the material that you use. What is the significance behind it? I know, Katherine, you talked about like breast milk, but I know, I think some of your works are also made with like cement. And then Heather, you have, I think, embroidery, right? Is that what it is on the newspapers? So I think there's a lot going on there. There's the video works itself, which are a total different, way to experience artwork. And we talked about the difference between seeing in person and not, right? So can you expand on just like your choice of materials, I guess, in the works in the show?
Sure, I'll jump in. The little sculptures that I have were made from donated used bottle nipples. Mm-hmm. So I'm collecting like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of parts for mothers from all over Canada and all over the US. I've even received some from England. So it's like my attic is full of other people's old breastfeeding and pumping paraphernalia. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to use them because women like keep them. Mm-hmm. And it's just like so much plastic and you don't know what to do with it when you're done. And you can donate some items, but a lot of them are deemed single use. Mm-hmm. And so places won't accept them. And I think all of the parts that come with motherhood are so overwhelming, especially when you're a new mother. And And I think I was feeling so much weight surrounding my breastfeeding experience, and I was overwhelmed. And instead of running from that, I kind of wanted to amplify it. And so I collected so many parts and wanted to transform the parts so I could transform how I felt about my experience. And so those bottles, I used cement because I felt like it was a heavy material that conveyed like the weight and the burden I was feeling, but also it's like a structural material that's meant to hold things up and support. And, you know, we put it into our buildings to make sure they last. And I feel like that's what mothers do. So there was like both, it's this strong, tough material, but it's also, it actually looks like porcelain and ceramic once it's kind of done. And people don't realize that it's cement until they pick it up and realize how heavy it is. And I think that's motherhood from the outside can look like one thing. And then unless you're close to it and really kind of pay attention, you don't realize how heavy it is. So those are my materials. I like to hear from Sarah too, because I think the flocking is so material. I don't know, like we didn't see that work in our crit group. And so that's a really interesting material for me.
Yeah, so my work kind of goes with things that you can't let go or don't want to let go of, but have to let go of as a person, a mother. And my work was kind of inspired by being at home with my family in COVID and just feeling like I was drowning in junk. When you have kids and you go to birthday parties and they get, you know, the goodie bags and there's just so much garbage. So I was trying to figure out what to do with it, because I also, you know, I'm someone who, before I had kids, I moved a ton. I would only keep what fit in my car, like, you know, move across country with nothing. And now, especially being stuck at home, I just feel overwhelmed and inundated with things. So I decided to take a bunch of my kids' old toys and sort of attach them to a surface. And the flocking, I saw an artist out of Chicago who does like really great flocking work that's kind of like very clean and minimal, like colorist work. And I was talking to him about it. And once I realized it was like material that you put in like jewelry boxes, like in woodworking stuff for like keepsakes or shadow boxes, I was like done, sold. Like that's what I want to use in terms of like it being a material that people use for keepsakes or storing things that are important to them. But it's basically a powder. And I really liked the idea of it looking dusty, like these objects were kind of left and collecting dust or decomposing. And then once I started using it and layering it, it had this like post-apocalyptic quality, which I also kind of like, because we think of just all the stuff that's going to be left like way past us. So I really like, yeah, like I said, this is new work for me, and I really like how it's looking. It has like a really nice textural quality, and again, it's a lot of adhesives. This flocking is not going to last forever. It falls apart. Like if you blow on it, the little tiny bit will come off, which I also kind of like. So yeah, that's a little bit about those materials.